Oh boy, folks, it is
It
February.
feels like February.
Sure. February in my heart and soul. The Valentine's Days type hearts. Well, we're here on the low end of things, folks, and we want to talk to you about something, but first we have to dawdle a little shortly, of course, because these are shorts. And then say something about how I'm Ryan and he's Harland. We're the Dawdlers. And this is the Dawdlers Philosophy Shorts.
And apparently, we're not coming out of hibernation to do this one.
No.
From the cave.
From the cave it is. Indeed. Well, I guess I'll just quickly say that we're just, worn out by life for the moment,
Life, the universe, and everything.
including things that aren't potentially, like the future.
Yeah, is the future not potentially? That sounds good right now. I don't need any future.
I don't know. Isn't the thing, the future never happened or something like that? Well, we've talked about time travel, unfortunately, and so this is sort of related in a way.
And we've talked about determinism, which is like it in a way.
Yes. But this is sort of like an epistemic perspective style, I think, that we might want to take as an approach. Because if we took those other two, time travel and determinism, then we wouldn't have much to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
But from the perspective of an individual who knows jack shit, the future, at least of all the concepts one has available to them, is one that we tend to do quite a bit of worrying about. And thinking about, right? We put a lot of energy towards tomorrow, and you hear a lot of people be like, "Oh, you gotta focus on the now and not the future," and all that kind of stuff.
Right?
When I ask, "What's your take on the future?" I kind of am expecting you to be like, "I hate it," or something like.
Oh, no. Well, today I might. When one's mood can affect their reports on perspective about the future. But I don't know why you would expect that in general I would hate the future or talking about it.
Uh, I don't know. I think. I guess the reason why I would think anyone might dislike the future is because the future might give people anxiety because there's a lot of uncertainty and because we have expectations and hopes and things like that. And if you've lived long enough, you know that sometimes expectations and hopes get dashed, and that's pretty disappointing. I don't know. I guess that's partly.
Yeah. If we talk about it in those terms, I guess I would say that my general orientation is usually maybe if you start with the present as a sort of cursor mark or something, and then look to the right, as we Americans would typically spatially metaphor it, that I would have maybe a gradient that goes up in emergency for a little bit. So it's yellow, then it's orange, then it's red, then it goes orange, yellow, or whatever, and then it goes to green and what it. So that for me, the far-flung future is rosy colored glasses, man. It is the greatest. I am living there. I've got goals and plans, and the distant future is very exciting. But then as it comes closer to me, then the anxiety comes up, and then it's like, oh my God, I've got to do that next week or whatever.
Yeah.
Or now or tomorrow or the next hour. By the end of the day, I have to get this done. So that as it gets to be the near future, that's where my anxiety is. But then as it actually happens, I'm sort of like doing the task. I don't think I'm necessarily anxious about the next 5 seconds, 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Uh-huh.
Like once the spotlight has come on and I've entered from stage left and I'm doing my lines, then the anxiety's down again. But it's that ramp up to a peak in the near future, and then it comes down again, and then the present is usually fine.
Yeah, there's like a weird sweet spot or whatever of anxiety or whatever about the future. But, like you said, 5 minutes from now, I don't have any anxiety really about that unless there's some real event like some kind of crazy risky operation or something that you
Yeah.
have to go undergo in 5 minutes. But then, your whole world has gotten small at that point. But like in general, just for tonight, 5 minutes from now, I don't care about that. Tomorrow, I've got a bunch of things to do and I have anxiety about that. And so I'm just like, fuck it. I don't want to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But then, 10 years from now, I don't know. That one's tough. Maybe like a few months from now when, maybe there's some time off and, you are not feeling the pressure to perform at a job, or maybe if you can, tag team your kids or whatever it is that, maybe you're on vacation or something like that, then okay, that's kind of nice. But actually, I would think that it peaks again. Because I mean,
Okay, sure.
I'm recently 40, and like, there's this set. It's kind of bimodal. It's like, yeah, okay, you got this near to you, but not 5 minutes from now, but
Mm-hmm.
within a week bracket more or less. You're a student and it's finals coming up or whatever, and that's kind of got some anxiety. But then, yeah, maybe like 10, 20 years out, that becomes another like, oh shit, I'm dead by then or
Right.
whatever. It's just like, so there's that aspect too. But I like this idea of like the peaks and valleys of emotion about the future. I would agree. I have that as well.
Another sort of visualized metaphor, like we also have talked in the past about, do you think in words or pictures? And for me, it's usually words. But one place where I've had a pictorial thought process, like you were saying, if we take an epistemic perspective picture about the future, thinking perspectively about time, an image that comes into my mind is like, take an old-fashioned speaker on one of those Victrola record
Yep.
players that comes out, and then it expands and kind of moves, and then as you go towards the center, it's this darker but narrower kind of hole down or whatever.
Yep.
I think of being an individual agent, being a perspective on the universe, is sort of like, take a big three-dimensional cloth ribbon type thing and then put a ring on it and then slide the ring along, and then so where the ring is the narrowest, the point where it all kind of funnels down, right? But then going out in both directions from it is a sort of record player horn shape,
Huh.
expanding out.
Yep.
Does this make sense?
I see it.
And that's my image of a Heideggerian Dasein or whatever, a being in time. That you are this kind of funnel point in both directions, in the future and past. It's like you can tell different stories about the possibilities that appear to you to exist out there as either potentials or stories about how you got to where you are. So if you look backwards to 5 minutes ago, then you have more confidence. Oh, yeah, I know what happened then, and I can report it relatively accurately. But then you go 5 years, 15 years, whatever, it just gets more and more broad. You're like, well, I think it was this, but there's a lot of variations on that story that would still also work to funnel down to where I am now. And then turn toward the future and start describing stories. Well, there's a smaller range of possibilities for 5 minutes out than there is for 50 minutes out, 5 weeks, etc. The further you go, maybe, if determinism is wrong. But, from your perspective here on the ring on the ribbon, looking forward, it appears as though there's greater and greater expanding ring and realm of possibilities the further out you go from where you are. And, I don't know, that's just one of the few times I've had a pretty clear visual analogy of of
It
something.
makes
So,
me it makes
that's a thought.
yeah, it makes me think of another way I'm also picturing it is like if you had, those napkin rings that people sometimes use in fancy situations. I don't know if you know about those.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Imagine like if you had a ring that was relatively tight, you could still kind of shove a napkin through there, but that it kind of unfurled and got sloppy, especially further out towards the end of the napkin or whatever, going in both directions. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I also think you could. I mean, for me, it also works that way, where the
It kind of like a bow tie pasta shape,
exactly, yes,
where it's scrunched up in the middle and then it kind of in waves goes out and then the
yeah,
ends are jagged.
yeah, but it loses its structure or whatever it is that the tight binding that the ring performs kind of creates the now. Everything's really right together.
Yep.
And then further out in both directions. But the thing is about for some reason we don't think we can change the past, but we do think we can change the future. I don't know if that's whether or not that's correct in either direction. I don't know why it's exclusively towards the future that I think we tend to think the future is something that can be manipulated. But I wonder about the past as well. So, but we don't have to dive too deep into that. I could tell you why I think it, but I do think that in general there is an inclination towards thinking that we have some kind of control over tomorrow than yesterday.
This is another place where I think Daniel Dennett has a nice, concise meme that really stuck in my head.
Mm.
Because he likes to engage in the free will debates and whatnot. And in that context, he sometimes talks about the future. And then he says, all right, well, you radical libertarian style free willists say you want to be able to change the future. From what to what? Right? The notion of change seems to have fixed states within it. In order for the future to reference something, it seems like it would have to be fixed as we think the past is fixed. But then if you think there's free will, then you think you can change the future. So then you're apparently, well, I guess it's not fixed anymore, but you're moving it from this state to this other, from state A to B. And that a way to bring about what some people see as an incoherence in that idea, that the past is fixed, but the future is open.
Right.
But you can change. Does that mean you can change the future? And then what does change mean and all that?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's many ways in which we might change the past, but it would be primarily, I think, a sort of epistemic. I mean, I think what people are saying when they want to change the future, I think they're meaning it in a most ontological way. But the changing the past, I mean, you can tell a different story about the past, which changes people's, in the present moment, whatever, let's say, could change your perspective on it. Maybe you were born growing up thinking General Custard was something, one way or the other. And then, maybe some new information comes to light or whatever, and we've now changed the story. And so now within my lifetime, this person has gone from, I don't know, good guy to bad guy or bad guy to good guy or whatever it is. And so I think in that sense, we might, in the epistemic way, change the past. Also, I think about how, in a like interpersonal way, like things you may have done, like say, it's the classic John Hughes movie style, like, there's a bully or whatever. And if you went back, or if you went to the high school reunion or whatever it is, and you really, you said to the person you bullied or whatever, I'm really sorry, and you really professed your angst and disappointment in yourself about the way you treated that person a long time ago, that might change the past for them in a way, because maybe now they see you and they see themselves in a different arrangement than they were prior to that, and so now the past's starting to change. So I'm wondering if that's also something that people think some initial conditions that they have at hand now, quote unquote now, they can then alter in some way, which will then change the trajectory of their lives or something like that. And we do that a lot in storytelling, right? I mean, this is probably much of what we're talking about could probably be couched in that type of a way or framework or whatever. And especially the way, at least in using English, the way we talk. I don't know about other languages per se, but
I would figure the standard reply to those considerations would be, you haven't changed the past. You have changed your present opinions or interpretation of the past.
yeah, yeah,
But that's something that happened in a now.
yeah.
That would be this kind of standard status quo way to talk about that, right?
I mean, yeah. I think when we talk about, yeah, yes, I agree. However, I do think that using language more loosey goosey wise, people tend to think about it in those ways because we are sort of, it's our dream or whatever, right? We only have our perspective, and yeah, you've got information you can give me, but I can't sit in your shoes or whatever. I don't know. It's the whole ashtray consciousness thing. Like, in many ways, I don't know if I don't know. There's just a
It also depends on what the quote unquote the past means. The response I was just giving has to do with this idea, kind of ontological past, that it's
Mhm.
an objective catalog of events fixed as what they were, and that you can say true or untrue things about them. A position one could take about it is, the past doesn't exist. Be a presentist. Everything that exists is in the present. If that's true, then perhaps the noise, the word, the past, refers to something in the now, which is our opinions about or reports on what we think happened in the past, where everything we say about it is false and wrong because none of that exists, only the present exists. So if we do presentism, then what I think you were describing literally would change the past, because all that the past means is what any given population's contemporaneous accounting of the past contains.
There you go. Yeah, no,
Did that make some sense?
that makes some sense. I like that. Yeah, there's a lot of different angles on this little one because we tend, I think, to give some kind of credence to Einstein's loaf in a way, but the fourth dimension is just one big wobbly, fluxy thing that the past it got hardened and it hardened, so it's like it's like you're bringing threads together, into a rope. The past is the threads that have already been wrapped around each other. They're not really moving. Maybe they can budge a tiny bit, but they aren't going to move wholesale all around. And then the future would be like all the separate strings that will form eventually a weave. And at the present is this point where the weaving is happening. And so, everyone wants to think that, somehow they can kind of move the strings in some particular way that will allow it to change the order in which it will, the sequence or whatever in which it will be woven or whatever. And if it weaves one way, it's terrible, and weaves another way, it's great, or whatever. And so here you are at the weaving point. But then, yeah, being a presentist, you could say, well, it's just a thing that's just happening. Maybe there are events, but there's no like spatial past, but then if you're Einstein and the loaf idea, then there is a physical past, or, because it's the multiple dimensions. So I don't know. I think most people on a regular everyday basis, when they think about the future, they pretty much go through that sweet spot thing that you were talking about, where 5 minutes from now, not a big deal. 6 months from now, not a big deal. But, in 2 days, God damn it. I hate to fly and I'm going to get on a plane. That about covers it, right?
Done and done.
There you go, folks. The future. You're welcome.
Armed with wealth and the best of health in the future when all's well. I will lie down and be counted in the future when all's well. What you are afraid of in the future when all's well. Every day I play a sad game called